Spray the air fryer basket with cooking spray or oil. Second, remove the stems from the mushroom caps and discard or save for alternate use. Third, use a knife to scrape the dark gills from the underside of the caps. Next, in a small bowl, mix the barbecue sauce and pineapple together.
Welcome to the Cue the Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Logan Stacer.
And I'm your other host, Michaela Stacer.
And we're going to get started with some Kansas City news.
So a tiny green beetle is killing Kansas City's trees. Luckily, we're home to the only man who can help us, Ant-Man.
Kansas City will be dyeing the water of some of its fountains blue this year to honor the Kansas City Royals, a much less controversial decision than in 2018 when we dyed the water red to honor the blood of our enemies.
And a trash fire burned in Kansas City and produced an aroma that was more pleasing than driving over the river.
Missouri native and fashion icon Jeremy Scott is leaving the fashion house Moschino. So Jeremy, if you have some free time, sponsor us. Great. Well, we got an awesome show today. Super excited to have our dear friend, Jerry Mañan.
Hello.
There we go. So, little known fact, Jerry and I used to be nemesises, but he didn't know that.
Oh, gosh.
But in seventh grade, take a look at Jerry real quick. Jerry, look at this camera. So, Jerry has looked like this since he was in seventh grade. Yep. And so he excelled at all the sports that I did not excel at because as a seventh grader, I was very small. But eventually, you know, we became artists, and now we're on an artists podcast.
But really what actually happened was... And what he means by what it looked like. I mean, well...
You've looked like this the whole time I've known you.
No, he's saying exactly what he means. I had a beard. I was 5'10".
Yeah.
In seventh grade. And then...
What happened?
Went by and I just stopped growing.
When did you get your beard? Was it fourth grade?
Okay, beard or mustache? Because those are two different questions.
Facial hair.
Facial hair, like... sixth grade.
You were like a sixth grader, like I'm ready for middle school with my mustache.
Yeah, I think my sixth grade yearbook picture is just like me smiling and I got
like a whole stash.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the beard come in.
Really not till recently, man. You know, I have those bad genetics where, you know, I grew goatee, mustache, but the sides really didn't fill in. Oh, but I had those sideburns for a long time.
Yeah.
Didn't you have like a soul patch too?
Probably.
Like in high school? Like or was that middle school?
A soul patch in middle school? I don't think so. I definitely was rocking like sideburns because you know, there just like comes that point in when you're like going through puberty and you're just like, dude, I finally have facial hair.
Yeah.
You just leave it alone, and it wasn't a good idea.
So when did you make the transition from like all-American middle school running back to like actor?
That's a good question because that pretty much happened right. Like those two moments coincide. Yeah. So I was like athlete, did the full trinity of like football right when school started, basketball during the winter, and then track in the spring. And then my first year playing, well, it wasn't my first year. My first official year, I guess, playing football in seventh grade, because, you know, before that, it was all kind of like rec league stuff. Yeah, I dislocated my shoulder. And that was like an end to my, that was it.
Seventh grade.
Dislocated shoulder.
Career's
Never
over.
bounced back.
No.
Never relocated it. No. Still gone. I can't find it. Yeah.
I don't know where it is.
Wow.
So you started doing theater in seventh grade?
No, actually. Okay. Well, so dislocated my shoulder in seventh grade football, went to play basketball because I was like, okay, well, whatever. Let's just like keep this going. Dislocated it again during basketball.
Yikes.
Track was like my only saving grace.
Yeah. It's hard to
dislocate it during track, but you'd be surprised in the situations that I dislocated it. Dislocating a joint is not fun. It just happens.
Interesting.
After that. Anyway, so yeah, then eighth grade came around and I couldn't do football. Like I had pretty much like decided that. And then I was like, okay, I'm not doing basketball either. Like what else am I going to turn my life towards, because I really liked like doing extracurricular activities. Like I had always done it since I was like in kindergarten. You know what I mean? But I think it was in 6th grade, our reading teacher, we did a project where we had to host a talk show kind of thing. Yeah.
Full circle moment for you right now.
Yeah. And like, she was like, oh my gosh, like, great job. Like, this is great. You should audition for the play. And I was like, well, I'm doing sports. Like, I'd love to. I wasn't like opposed to it, but I was just like, I'm busy, you know?
You have to talk to my agent.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was having a Troy Bolton moment.
Yeah.
Another one. So our third.
I didn't
Troy Bolton
dance
moment
and
of the
sing
season.
though, you know? But then and then 7th grade came around, reading teacher again was like, Jerry, like, you should audition for the play. And I was like, I can't, you know what I mean? So like, there had been these like moments where my teachers and both of those teachers, like I looked up to, had like been recommending me to do this, but I just couldn't. And so I think when it came to that moment where I didn't have the extracurricular activities that I had been relying on for so long, I was like, okay, well, it's time to do theater. Let's audition. So that was in 8th grade. And you know, like I always talk about too, like, growing up, like me and my brother, my older brother, like we would like improv games and stories, and we didn't know that we didn't call it improv. You know, we were just messing around. Yeah. And, so it like was very much like a natural part of growing up, you know, like just messing around and telling these stories and being different characters and coming up with ideas on the spot, you know? But yeah, so it wasn't until 8th grade, and it's so sad because my dad is still like, hey, remember that character you played? Were you in a wheelchair? Man, that was great. I was like, that was 8th grade,
He
Dad.
peaked in 8th grade.
According to my dad, yeah, like he's like, man, remember that time you played that guy in a wheelchair? God, he did so good. I was like, I've literally had so many other roles since then, and but to my dad, that's the one.
Wow.
Maybe he just loved it. It was like you were coming into like yourself. So maybe that's why it's important.
Maybe, but now as an adult, he's like, man, remember when you played football? And I'm like, Dad, I'm an actor. And he's like, yeah, remember when you played football though?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, whatever.
That's fair.
So do you only identify as an actor?
No. I mean, I don't know what I identify as. Obviously, like I identify as an actor because that's like my profession. That's very much like my career, but
That's what pays the bills.
kind of, but also not really.
Pays part of the bills.
Part of the
pays
bills.
one bill.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I love doing filmmaking. I love writing. You know, before I became a storyteller, I guess, I love to draw. And then like really anything creative. Like I just love doing creative stuff. But I mean, as far as identifying, I mean, I don't like go around talking, I'm a drawer, you know? I definitely don't say that. So I do like, I would say like, you know, definitely like actor, filmmaker, writer is kind of my, but I use all those skills, you know, just like drawing and painting for my actual profession that actually pays the bills, which is like graphic designing. And,
So you just live an all around artsy life right now.
kind of, yeah. And like, I don't get tired of it.
That's good.
That's good.
It's nice. And I think that that's like one of the things that I've learned to embrace recently is embracing not the chaos, but like having your hand in a couple different buckets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're tired of this, let me go color a picture. You know what I mean? Let me go write a scene. Let me go, study something. You know what I mean? Like it just never gets tired when you kind of have a couple different things you can turn to, and they all influence each other, you know?
Yeah. So as like, you know, going back to 8th grade wheelchair Jerry, you know, like as an athlete, it's like, oh, I want to be like Michael Jordan. I want to be like Kobe. I want to be like LeBron, blah, 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 blah. when you went to acting, was there like, I want to act like this person, or did you like have anyone you studied film or?
Yeah, that's actually, yeah. So, so like my first, so 8th grade happened, did the school play where I was in a wheelchair, and then we got into high school, and that was like when, okay, I'm going to audition for the high school play, which kind of felt like a bigger deal. Which just so happened to be also my first Shakespeare production too, which kind of like started that journey. Actually, fun fact, each of my firsts in acting have all been Shakespeare. Wow. So my first high school show was Shakespeare. My first college show was Shakespeare. And my first professional show was a Shakespeare show.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Anyway.
That is good. But not your first middle school show.
Not my first middle school.
They didn't have wheelchairs in those times?
It was like Degrassi. You and Drake have that.
That's what I was thinking. He's like Jerry in the wheelchair, like little Jerry.
Yeah. No Shakespeare in middle school.
Yeah.
So when I started taking it a little bit more seriously in high school, freshman year of high school, as serious as you can take it then, I had always liked movies, which was part of the main motivation to like, okay, I can be an actor, I love movies. But we didn't grow up with that many movies growing up. Like my parents didn't buy movies.
Oh,
like,
okay.
The main way that we would watch movies was like what was on TV. Like every now and then when you bought your DirecTV subscription, you got like 3 months of HBO Max for free, like that was the main way that I watched movies. But like, I remember I loved movies so much. Like one of my friends had The Godfather. And I scrapped up some coins and I was like, dude, can I buy The Godfather from you?
Oh, wow.
And so I bought The Godfather from him. And so like The Godfather was like my first like real dive into movies, into acting. Like I watched that movie so many times when I was in like middle school. And because of that, like, he's just, I feel like for a while, still is like the face of acting is like Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
So I think at that moment it was like Marlon Brando. That's who you got to strive to be.
That's
like.
the bar.
That's the bar. Right. And it's like such a high bar. Like,
it is.
You can't, who knows when that bar will be reached, if ever, but like, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to set that bar up high so that you're always like climbing the ladder, and pushing yourself to push for more. But yeah, I would say like Marlon Brando was
nice.
The first.
That was the guy.
He was the Jordan.
Guy. So high school, Marlon Brando. Were you doing musicals too, or just plays?
No, dude. I was like forced to do musicals.
Can you sing?
No. I appreciate the honesty.
I can't. I would say that I can't.
So were there any other ways you were sharpening your acting craft?
Yeah. Well, you guys know.
Well, we know. We've known you since, he's known you since middle school. I've known you since high school. But
Yeah. Well, so theater was great in high school because you get to learn like a lot of the fundamentals of acting, like projecting, like just making sure that you're, out towards the opening up towards the audience, like not upstaging yourself, just like being comfortable on stage. So that was great. But I think like where I really got to like hone my craft and really became like interested in it and, passionate about it was in high school forensics. And I think that the reason why that was really like the next step, I guess, that like, it was so important. Like, I don't know if I didn't have forensics in high school, if I would have continued to be an actor. I don't know. I don't know if I would have, because I think like what forensics allowed me to do, it like opened a lot of doors. It, as far as a school play, it's like, hey, we're going to do this show. And I'm like, okay, I guess we'll do that. It's the only choice I have. You know what I mean? But with high school forensics, like it was like, okay, pick your piece, pick your 10-minute performance, cut it. And so like, you're kind of like in many ways, like thrown to the wolves. Right. And like figure it out, you
Yeah.
know? And so, you know, you have to, like, you're learning storytelling on the spot, like with cutting your script. You know, you're crafting your craft. Like, you learn your lessons. You're like, okay, this didn't work. Like, let me change this. And also you're getting feedback from people,
Yeah.
you know,
Every weekend.
And, you know, it's also learning, like, okay, like after a while, obviously, like you're like, well, thanks for the feedback. I'll take that, or I won't take that. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think that that's still accurate to today. You know what I mean?
It's accurate to life.
It's accurate. Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, you know, when you're on stage, like as a professional, you know, like, maybe you know that this joke lands or whatever, but like one night it doesn't. Maybe 2 nights it doesn't. And so you either are like, okay, I need to adjust something, or you got to be like, no, I know that it's right. You know, this audience was just a sleepy audience. You know what I mean? Like, let me just keep it, you know, and it really allows you to like put a trust in your work. You know what I mean? Anyway, and also, so like, you know, we're dealing with like different types of content, you know, in forensics too. And I think that was the thing too, was like more serious content. And so you got to approach it just like differently with a different amount of gravitas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, forensics was definitely like really, really, really impactful for me.
That's good.
Yeah.
So going from high school into college, studied acting as well?
Yeah. Studied acting and film.
Acting and film. Okay.
Yeah.
So you added your first hyphen.
Yeah, that was the first moment. Yeah, because I guess before then I didn't really consider myself a writer.
Yeah. You started directing.
Yeah, I
as
mean,
well.
I kind of forced, you know, not forced to, but because that's like, you know, whenever I became like, you know, went into college as a filmmaker, you know, part of that reason was, you know, I wanted to learn also like what acting was like in front of the camera, but my university didn't offer like classes in front of the camera. So, but I also liked movies, and I liked, I knew like, I would always have like, oh dude, that would be a great movie idea, you know, as like, I'm just living life. And then up until that point, I'm like, oh my, like I could learn the basics of creating my own movies while also like it overlapping into acting and being like, okay, now I can take what I learned from that. And even though I'm not taking classes about acting in front of the camera, I know what it takes from behind the camera to have a good performance. And so that's like going back to what we were talking about like the multi-hyphenation, like having your hands in different things and how much overlap there is with anything that's creative. That was like really where things started to become clear to me as far as like the way I approach creativity.
Yeah.
You know,
I think this is a good time for us to have you look here and give the audience some free game.
Free game.
Because it sounds like you're learning about acting. Maybe some free acting game, directing game, writing game.
Or game is a multi-hyphenate.
Multi-hyphenate game. Give them some free game. Free game.
all right, here's the free game. So I mean, well, I think I've already given you guys free game, if I'm being honest. I mean, I think that the free game is to not limit yourself. You know, you can't, I mean, I think that that's like been the way to approach your profession for, you know, hundreds of years now in the United States. But you know, what I've learned is that, you know, having your hands in multiple things do overlap, and they do, you learn from other things. I mean, even for example, before I became a filmmaker, like in college, like, I would draw, right?
Yeah.
And like learning what thing, like, you know, I have my own aesthetic of visual art, you know, and now that transfers over to film, and like I learned photography. And so now, and because of drawing, I think that led me to photography and just being like aesthetically pleasing, you know, like creating visual aesthetics, you know? And so like everything influences everything. My writing has become influential to my filmmaking, like creating stories. My writing has influenced my acting. Now I know when I'm reading a script, this is the climax of the show, like, which is an obvious thing, but maybe this is the moment for the hero where all is lost. And I know that I have to communicate that story to the audience. So like that can dictate the choices I make, that has influenced my art, like my graphic design and drawing and stuff like that. Okay, what's the story that I'm trying to tell here? What choices can I make in the clothes that they're wearing, the medium that I'm using, the like how many jagged lines I need to put in to convey like a certain amount of energy, right? Like everything influences everything. And I think it's a disservice for people to not explore other mediums.
Powerful.
That was good.
That was good. So taking your jump from college, you said your first professional show was theater or was Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. What was the jump like? Like what were some of the differences you found working with like professional actors versus fellow students? You
mean from college to like professional?
Yeah, when you were in the I'm in the real world.
Yeah, that was cool. That was a cool moment. If like I think like, when you looking back on your life, I think that that's going to be something that you like that I'm going to hold with me for like for the rest of my life. Is like a few things that I noted. One of the first thoughts that I had, which was like super cool, was I remember walking into the rehearsal. I was like getting ready to walk into the rehearsal hall, and I was like, I'm getting paid for this. Like I've been doing this
since I was in
10 years,
wheelchair in 8th grade.
Yeah.
For free.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, this feels good. And I think like what the point of that is like, it's nice to get that feeling of that reassurance of what you're doing is worth something. You know what I mean? Or, like, I don't know, there's a lot to it. Like, it was more than just like, oh, I'm getting money. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was like, oh man, like I can do what I love and get paid for it.
Yeah.
That was one of the main thoughts that I had. One of the biggest learning lessons, and I tell people all the time, especially when like, I meet younger artists and they're about to do their first professional show, is like, look, like some people are going to want to like go into another room and hang out and talk. And like, that's great. Like networking is great. But if you have the chance to sit in with professionals who have been doing this twice as long as you, 3 times as long as you, who get paid for this annually, getting gigs after gig after gig, watch them, learn from them, take notes from them. That was like one of the biggest, things that for me was like, okay, like I'm going to sit in here and I'm like, oh, like the way they approach the scene is not necessarily different than like what I have been taught, but they're approaching it with a just a different type of energy, with a different, what are the questions that they're asking themselves? What are the questions that they're asking the director about the scene? Like, what are they doing, to have a successful performance? Which was, it was just like, that was really such a big deal. And I felt so grateful and privileged to have been a part of my first professional show with 1 year left in college.
Oh, that's good.
So I went for 5 years, and I luckily was cast during my 4th year. And so I went in there and I was able to learn, like, watch everybody and learn. And then I had a whole nother year of just experimenting kind of. Okay, now I've learned, I've like seen all this stuff. I've kind of been in the room. Now let me just like try stuff out and try to put application into the rehearsal space and stuff.
So I'm gonna ask you to dive a little bit deeper here, and maybe going into your director bag. What's like a technical aspect where you can identify this is good acting versus like this is not so good acting, or good acting versus great acting? Like what were the technical things you were learning in this season?
Dude, there's like, this is gonna sound so dumb, but and I still have a hard time with this, but it was something that I learned then, and I'm still like, again, trying to apply it.
Yeah.
So, you're taught all this technique. You're taught like, what is your objective? Like, what are your obstacles? Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? But such a large part of acting, your job is just for an audience to believe that you are this character. Okay. And so much of that sometimes is like, yes, you got to do your objective. You got to do your obstacles. You got to do your thing. But so much of that is just like, I just got to be a person.
Yeah.
I just got to talk. I just got to like ask questions. I just have to, like be real. You know what I mean? Like, and that takes a certain amount of self-awareness, that takes a certain amount of study, of other people, like, I don't know. There's so much examples. I mean, it's like, asking me what, like what,
how makes Marlon Brando.
Right. Like, how can you make sure that the person that's sitting across from you is acting like a real person? You know what I mean? Like, but if I just started like being a little weird, like you'd be like, this guy's acting weird.
Yeah.
He's not acting real, and that's such a dumb thing, because like, that's sort of like the obvious, but it's harder than it sounds. And it's also, I don't think that the majority of actors like have noticed that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's to a certain extent, it's like the easiest thing you can do is like to not overcomplicate it, but it's also the hardest thing to do, because again, if I were to ask you, what does being real look like? You'd be like, well, it's
here.
Yeah, it's
Right.
just here. You know what I mean? And also, and then tacked on with like the adrenaline rush, the anxiety or whatever that you get on stage, where your heart's beating, you're saying scripted lines, like it's unnatural circumstances. You know what I mean? But your job is to kind of like do as much preparation as you can and as much exploration as you can in the rehearsal room, so that all of that goes away and the audience is left with the character who you are playing.
Good.
No, I agree. 'Cause it is like hard to explain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can totally tell when you're on stage, like if somebody breaks character and you're like, they're not in it now.
It's
and
a
I'm
different
supposed
energy.
to, and you're like, I'm still trying to be in it, but they're not in it. Like,
Yeah.
it's real. I don't know how to explain that, but yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah. And I think it's those actors that we look up to in Hollywood or, on Broadway or whatever, who are able to like take it that next step, that you're like, I'm no longer seeing XYZ. I'm seeing this character.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, and that's hard. Like, again, like it's the easiest thing to know, but it's like one of the hardest things to do.
So as an actor, because a project ends, right? And so you go into a new role with a new character. And so every time you restart that process, do you feel like you kind of just hope, okay, I hope the skills that I had in that last show got a little better, and it's sort of like do you feel like you're starting from scratch every time, or how do you approach a new role or approach a new show?
Yeah, I think that you like, yeah, I mean, it's the same every time, but like, I mean, I think the hope is that your last performance, the last thing you did, can now inform your next project. That you're hoping that you learn something new, so that you can, carry it on consciously or subconsciously to your next project. Yeah, I mean, I don't think, unless it's something totally new, like for example, and again, having your hand in different buckets, last year I was introduced to puppeteering for the first time, and I was excited by that opportunity. I mean, speaking of making things look real, that's part of my entire life. I've been fascinated by puppets. Like, I don't know that I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do that. You know what I mean? But like, there was absolutely a sense of fascination and amazement of like, if somebody's puppeteering something, all of a sudden the guy or woman or whoever who has their hand in the puppet or is moving the puppet is invisible. And this thing is alive. And again, you noticing like when suddenly it's not like, and then, if that person is no longer puppeteering it or whatever, and it becomes like a dead puppet, you know what I mean? You're like, oh my gosh. Like, so I think that was like one of the things that I was fascinated by that, but like learning those skills. And I think that's, for me, that's what's exciting about learning those skills is like, you aren't starting from scratch. You know what I mean? Like now there takes a certain amount of exploration that you have to figure out. So, I mean, I think that the hope is again that you like build on top of it, but I mean, I think that's why you also go to school. Yeah. And I applaud people who don't go to school because I'm like, you're jumping in and like you are exploring in your profession, like, and during the time that you're supposed to be getting paid and know what you're doing, that's when you're exploring and figuring things out. There's a certain amount of like, comfort room that you get when you go to school because you can fail. Yeah. You know what I mean? It takes a certain amount of, like you're risking a lot. It feels like, and you also don't have like a specific person who's telling you like, this is what to do and stuff. So I think that, that's why you go to school is to like nail down your what's the word? Like just your approach to acting.
Interesting. So professionally, you've been in Kansas City since you graduated. You've been working consistently in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about what is the Kansas City acting scene like? What's the Kansas City theater scene like? What would you like to see more of in Kansas City?
Yeah. I definitely still consider myself like new to the Kansas City scene. Like, I think I've been told like, Jerry, you know what I mean? Like you've been working consistently. You're used to this or whatever. You're a part of the scene. But I definitely still feel new. So there's definitely stuff that I'm still learning, that I'm still navigating and stuff like that. Unfortunately, like Kansas City is a big enough theater city. It's actually like larger than most cities in the United States.
Second largest in the Midwest?
Second largest theater city in the Midwest to Chicago.
And so like even a city that's known, like Minneapolis is known for a lot for theater. And yet we're like a little bit bigger. So it's like big enough to be listed as number 2. Yeah. But it's small enough where you can't make a living off of it. Like even if you were working back to back shows for a whole year.
Do you know anyone who does here?
I don't, like, not really. Or if I do, like people who I'm like, maybe they don't have a day job. You know what I mean? You're risking like, less money. Yeah. You know what I mean? And a lot of some of the people who I think were doing that over the pandemic, like that really showed them like, oh man, yeah, this is hard. Like, what was I doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's tough to like, never know when you're going to get your next gig. Yeah. You know what I mean? and you kind of have to like work at that and hope and prepare and build, you know, and that's the thing too, is that once you get a gig, that is like, you know, you have your resume, but you have like your visual resume, you know, people, your experience resume, like of other people, your reputation. Yeah. And that's like probably the most important thing. And I don't know if people like think about it like that, but like, you know, when you get a gig, like that is ammo for your next gig, as far as like, okay, people can see me now. People can see what my end product is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And people have worked with you. They know what you're like.
Right. People have worked with you. They know what you're like, and you know, that's a big thing too. Like what your end product is and who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Those two things are not separate.
Yeah.
Like, if you are not great to work with, like, better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be good to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, you know, still small enough that you can't make a living, and there's not like big enough gigs to where like that can sustain you like that. So, you know, but like that's part of the charm for some people. Some people move to Kansas City because of that, because they know that they don't want to act full time, you know, or something like that. And again, I don't act full time. So like, I'm not one of those people who's like,
right,
I'm acting full time. Yeah. And they're like, I want to start a family. I want to teach on the side. You know what I mean? As opposed to like, if you're in New York City and the grind is real, you know, and you got to be working, and you probably don't necessarily have time to start a family.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's the charm for some people. But yeah, like, yeah.
Are you involved in the film scene here?
No.
Is there a film scene here?
My impression, and I could be wrong because I don't consider myself being involved in the film scene in Kansas City, but my impression and observation is that if there is, it's very niche, and it's kind of hard. It's like, I think that it's harder to get into the film scene because the opportunities aren't as apparent. Anybody who's making films are like me, who like, it's my budget probably, and I'm going to hire the people that I know, you know?
Yeah. A lot of indie production, you think? Yeah,
a lot of indie production. And again, like they're just hiring in their groups. Like there's a lot of like circles, you know, and sure, within those circles, they might share, be like, hey, I need this. I need somebody who can do this, you know? But there's not like production companies who are holding auditions, or like, even if you get, you know, even if you have an agent, you know, most of the gigs that you're going to get called in for commercials, and not very many films, short films, feature films, like not very many. If you're going to get like feature or short films, it's going to be from who you know.
Interesting. And
your networking of filmmakers and directors and writers who are making films in Kansas City.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So yeah, switching gears then away from acting and into more of your writing and more of your directing. How has that aspect of your career progressed since college?
What are you laughing at?
I don't know. You started laughing and I started laughing. You look like you had a secret.
I don't have a secret. I already gave you my game.
Yeah, he's like, no more secrets.
No more secrets. Sorry, will you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Film.
Writing. Other than theater acting, how have your skills grown since college, and how have you continued to water that part of your talent garden?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one for me that, like, again, like, they compound, you know what I mean? Like, you write something, you direct it, and like, that is number one rule of, if you're starting off as a filmmaker, here's game number 2.
Free game.
Okay.
She's less hyped about it. She's our mascot. This is the free game mascot.
Free game number 2. If you're starting off as a filmmaker, if you like films, if you ever like have seen yourself wanting to make a movie, just do it. Nobody's going to hold your hand to make your movie. Nobody, I promise you, except you, and you have that power to do it. I mean, a lot of people, like, as cheesy as it sounds, like, you have your phone, like, but you do, like, there's movies now that are in like
there's like Netflix iPhone movies
that are in like the film festival scenes that have been shot on their iPhones. Or if you have a little bit of extra money, buy yourself like a little bit of a nicer camera and then shoot with that. Whatever. Like, we have the tools like that, like, and so like, like back in the day, like it was definitely like a financial barrier to make a movie out. That's all I'm saying, is that now it's less of a financial barrier. The biggest barrier that you have now is yourself.
Yeah.
So, like when you decide, and for me, like, it was like, okay, you might write your short film, do it, say F it, just do it. 'Cause you're going to learn it. It's probably going to suck, but like nobody ever has to see it.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's only a handful of people who have ever seen my first short film. There's only a handful of people who have ever seen my second short film. You know what I mean? Like, and as you continue learning, you just like, you learn from those experiences, and each one in theory gets better and better and better. And luckily, unlike like theater, if you're starting off as an actor, you can't watch yourself and be like, oh, I'm going to do that next time, or whatever. Like but you can watch your film and be like, that was, I know what I did wrong there. Like, my lighting there was wrong. That when I edited that, I edited it too short. Like, the scene goes by too fast, maybe it has nothing to do with the way you directed it or the way you shot it. Maybe it goes back to your writing. Like, maybe you're like, oh yeah, the dialogue just feels, like, like maybe it sounded good on paper, but like seeing it in film, like the pacing of it just wasn't right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, as far as that goes, it's still progressing. It's still going, and I still have to say F it, even after like having written a handful of screenplays and having made a handful of short films.
And F it means forget it, because this is a family production.
It does. Just forget it.
Just forget it.
Just forget everything you ever knew and just do it.
Except what you need to know to do it.
Exactly. Forget everything you ever knew, except just do it. But remember the things that you need
to do it.
Forget everything you ever knew except for what you need to know so that you can do it.
There you go.
There it is.
Free game 3.
Free game 3. So what are you working on now?
As far as theater goes, I have an upcoming show with Kansas City Actors Theater.
Nice.
With Little Women. That's
the name of it, not your cast's demographic.
Right. Well, some of them are short, but I'm just kidding. So that's happening. I think we open late April, early May. And then for film, working on a short film that I'm going to be shooting this summer. And then I am also, over the pandemic, like the theater that, I have the opportunity to be a part of, started a radio series. And so I've been, holding off on them. I'm like, hey, I have a show that I'm writing for you guys, and it's going to be great, but it's taking time. So I have like a couple different things, and I think that that's okay. Especially when it comes to writing. I think it's really important to have a couple different things that you're writing, because sometimes you get writer's block and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen next, or this scene just sucks. I can't, I keep rewriting it and nothing happens. And you're like, well, put a pause on that. And then you go work on your other thing. And most of the time because you kind of like just have that on the back burner, but it's still there.
Still simmering.
It can, that's when like I got my idea from writing this other script because I'm problem solving the structure, or I was writing the scene, and and also you just get, if just putting things to the side and just like living life, you're like, okay, I got the idea now.
That's good. So we have a section of our show called "Do the Thing," where we invite you to do the thing that you do.
Yes.
So, I have scripts.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Here, and so this is actually episode 2 of that radio show.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
And the radio show is of Zorro. And it's a retelling of Zorro, based more on what the character was originally based on, which was a real Mexican bandit called Joaquin Murrieta. And less, there's some of like the elements of the character and callbacks and stuff like that, but this scene actually doesn't feature Zorro at all.
Oh, wow.
This is the very beginning of episode 2. And this specific scene has a lot of like political satire, and my style, I love dark comedy. It's my favorite genre. So like there's a lot of dark comedy in here. So you guys are going to read it with me.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
So I played the Uno reverse
Are we
card.
camera acting?
Yeah. Okay.
Here, I only have 2 paper copies and I need to pull mine up.
Okay. So, thank you.
Who am I?
Who am I? Oh my gosh.
Who wants to be the politician and who wants to be the senator?
Oh,
I'll probably be the politician.
You told me never to let you be a politician.
I know. So this is where I can.
This is the only time that you.
All right, then I'll be the senator.
And then Logan, you're the politician, and then I'll play.
How many pages are we gonna read?
It's like 6 pages, 5 pages, something like that.
Oh wow.
Okay, so this is a whole a whole production happening here on the Cue the Spotlight podcast,
And I had
gotta
no
go
time
from-
to reherse.
This is a cold read, and I gotta
Here's yours.
go into the acting bag real quick outside of
Let me
the.
pull from the crevices.
I'll read John Bigler.
Okay.
And I'll also read like the sound directions and stuff too.
Oh, you're gonna do sound effects.
Well, I'm not. Oh, I can do sound effects.
Okay.
You want
Wow.
me to do sound effects? Is that gonna be
Well,
fun?
yes. Do sound effects.
Do
I mean,
everything. This is a listening
just
experience.
go
as
for
well.
it.
All right.
I mean,
You're only on the show when you're on the show. Every moment is a once in a lifetime moment. So let's make the most of it.
I didn't know I was getting cast today.
Yeah. Just to give people background to the scene. Like I said, this is episode 2, very beginning. So you're not missing much apart from episode 1, the entire 30 minutes of episode 1. And episode 1 is really like the origin of Zorro. And we've seen Zorro, Joaquin Murrieta, used to be a gold miner. And the story takes place whenever the United States colonized California, and California became a state. And so John Bigler is the governor of California. And then there's just generic politician and senator.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
Always wanted to be generic.
And I'm a generic senator.
You're
Congratulations.
This is your only time to be a politician, so here you
Okay.
go.
Let me go. All right. John Bigler starts it off, and he says, "Since we've passed the Foreign Miners Act, we've experienced a significant toll on our state economy. Washington isn't happy. They say they need more money from our newly declared state, so I am proposing we pass a revised version of this Foreign Miners Act, wherein we'd grant some immigrants to capitalize on the gold our precious state sits on. By some, I do mean our beloved white-skinned individuals. Based on our calculations, by allowing these immigrants to mine gold, California should begin to resemble the fruitful economy our American citizens have come to expect." Senator, you can put your hand down. Do you have a question?
Yes, Governor. You say we're allowing the white immigrants to mine our gold. Which white immigrants are we allowing exactly?
How do you mean?
Say, like, countries?
Well, I'd say we should consider the white majority countries, the French, Danish, Brits, you understand?
Does that include Swedish people?
Why, of course.
What about Persians?
Prussians.
Prussians.
Absolutely.
Austrians?
Why not?
People from Finland?
No doubt.
Belgians?
Yes.
Turks?
No.
What about Italians?
Sure. Italians could mine here. I don't see why not.
Well, see now, I've known many Italians to be a bit darker than white. How white are we talking here?
White. I'm not sure what you're asking here.
Well, no, Governor. See, I just recently started taking up painting. Just last week, in fact. I was out painting clouds, and I've been learning these are different shades of white. Cream, eggshell, ivory, daisy, coconut, snow white, pearl. You get the idea. Sometimes I gotta mix in a little color into the white to get the right. Oh, darn it. What's the word?
Hue.
Hue. That's it. God bless you.
Amen.
I gotta mix in a little color on my palette to get the right hue for these clouds to look right, or else they just don't look right. And see, on the palette, it looks almost brown, but once I put that paint on the canvas, she screams white. Is it white?
A murmur across the room. They don't know what to make of this. Good freaking question. The gavel pounds. Order, order. The room quiets down. Senator, we got to take a look at the bigger picture here. When you lay the paint down, if she screams white, she's white. There ain't nothing to it.
But
there ain't no buts. White. End of question. Moving on. Yes, another question.
That answers the question for Italians, but what about Spaniards?
Even more murmuring in the room. Another good question. What about Spaniards?
Governor, pardon me. I don't want to keep begging the question, but there are a lot of Spaniards who are living in Los Angeles right now, who we fought against in the war, a lot of them white. Do they get to mine our gold?
You're answering your own question here. If they are white, they can mine. If they are not freaking white, they stay cleaning our shoes, working saloons, making pottery. Shoot, they could be shaving a cat's butt. I don't give a damn. But they are not mining our gold. Are we clear? Soft murmur amongst the crowd. Moving on. Oh, Lord help me. What do you want?
what about the Chinese?
Oh, well, that's easy enough. No Chinese.
The Chinese do look kind of white, though.
They're not white.
But didn't we say if they look white, they're white?
Yes, but in this case, we know that the Chinese are not white. We know this scientifically. See?
I only ask because I just got done getting my hair cut, and my barber, friendliest fella, gives my daughter a lollipop every time we go in. I thought he was white as can be. Turned out he was half Chinese.
Even louder murmur across the room. No one knows the answer. Quiet. Now you hear me. Open your ears for just 2 stinking minutes and listen. I said white. Not pearly white, not creamy white, I'm talking about European white. White. That's final, understand? And if I hear one more word debating semantics on the color white, by golly, a large door slams in the background.
Help!
A
ghost at the camp. Dead. No one but me.
And that's where we end the scene.
Wow.
So anyway, that's based on a true law that happened in California. That, California, as we know, is filled with gold. Mm-hmm. And a lot of
is it now?
Spaniards. I mean, I guess it might still be. I don't know. A lot of Spaniards, they were gold rich before they were colonized, and then almost immediately after California became a state, anybody who was, this is really funny. Anybody who was foreign couldn't mine the gold, but then they realized that they didn't have anybody who could mine the gold. So They were like, well, we'll just we'll revise the act, and only people who are European white can mine the gold.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty ridiculous, and that's where the political satire comes in. And it's really like, about the themes of the Zorro show. And,
Right.
Zorro we see as like a hero who fights crime and bad people, villains, and stuff like that. But what happens when Zorro, a person who normally fights physically, has to fight a political fight too?
Oh,
There we go.
I'm sold. Hopefully, get you some more listeners. Now we also prepared something
for you.
No
so we're turning
way.
it back around.
So, you said you had improv experience, and a good actor, has to stay on their toes, be adaptable. So I have this here, the complete vegan air fryer cookbook. And I would like you to do a dramatic reading in your, Shakespearean, channel your Shakespeare energy. And I would like you to cold read this recipe to us.
For barbecue Bellas.
For barbecue Bellas.
All right. Dramatic reading of Barbecue Bellas. Barbecue Bellas. Yield 8 mushrooms. Prep time 15 minutes. Cooking time 8 minutes. Total time 23 minutes. Super easy. Taster favorite. Now, fresh pineapple adds a bright, sweet, and fruity taste to plain old bottled barbecue sauce. Choose your favorite brand to make these morsels a must-eat treat. First, spray the air fryer basket with cooking spray or oil. Second, remove the stems from the mushroom caps and discard or save for alternate use. Third, use a knife to scrape the dark gills from the underside of the caps. Next, in a small bowl, mix the barbecue sauce and pineapple together. Fifth, spoon the barbecue pineapple mixture into the caps. And lastly, carefully place the caps into the prepared air fryer basket and cook at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 8 minutes. But note, if your caps are a bit larger or want to double the recipe, you can stack them on top of each other to cook in one batch. And here's an extra tip for you. Save the mushroom stems for making your next batch of veggie broth.
Crushed it.
That was fantastic.
I think I need to make those.
I know. We're about to bring those to the next episode. And hopefully our viewers can, implement that as well. That was great. How'd that feel for you?
I felt pretty good. Honestly, had no idea what I was saying.
Kind of just blacked out.
Yeah. Honestly,
blacked out with the Bellas.
I've learned that sometimes blacking out in the middle of your performances, you're just like, what just happened?
Free game.
Blackout during your performances.
So, Jerry, at this point in your career, you're an artist doing a lot of things. How do you go about creating like the brand of Jerry Mañan and getting yourself out there in Kansas City? And do you want to go to other cities?
I think that right now, theater is a live event, and I there's a large part of me that cherishes that. And so my branding is what you see on stage. I take pride in that. And then again, just being a good person, and being welcoming to your other actors and to welcome, your audience members. I couldn't do this if it wasn't for audience members coming in and supporting live theater, which is, I'm not going to say it's a dying craft because I don't think that it will ever die. But we have a certain amount of, comfort in watching streaming shows, and there are less people who come out, to the theaters now. And I think the pandemic really reassured that. So for the people who still come out to the theaters and support actors, we act for you. We want to give you a good time, a good night, a good story. Hopefully, maybe depending on the show, change your views on a couple of things, make you see things a little bit differently. We do this for you, and so that's, as far as my theater acting goes, that's what I take again, like, going back to your reputation, like every show that you do, just, is influences your next show. And it's a moment for you to be like, this is me, this is my art, this is my craft, this is what I work on, this is what I love. And I want to show you, and hopefully I can show you this one story. And, if you like it enough, follow me on Instagram, and I try to post as much, of my next stuff coming up, so that people who do fall, who do end up following me on Instagram because I saw one of my performances can keep up, besides that, my filmmaking and writing and stuff like that. Again, my Instagram is pretty like, I try to include it as much as I can on there. So,
right.
Hopefully with this film coming up over the summer, I'll be updating that, and just kind of letting people know, what's going on, and just how I'm never not creating, it feels like.
That's awesome though.
Yeah.
So last question, right?
Yeah.
So what is your vision, like your dream for yourself in your career?
I think, right now, because, I've had other visions in the past, and I think it's important to be flexible, and to adapt as you go. And that's very much like what, I've done, like I had plans, and, they just change and stuff happens and you adjust, but still like at the heart, of what you do, it stays the same, and I think at the heart of what I've always wanted to do is to make this my full time, at the heart, across each of my adaptations of visions is, wanting to do this full time, wanting to get paid a full year's salary to do this, and, somebody I talked to one time said that their dream was to like only get paid by what they make, their art. And I stole that. And I think that that's what my vision is. I don't know how that's going to manifest, and I'm okay with that. If that happens to be here in Kansas City, great. If that happens to be in another city, great. If that happens to only be with theater, great. If that happens to be with theater and film, great. I don't, all I know is that at the end of the day, that's like what I want, is for me to be fully financially stable doing my art. And that's it.
Amen.
That's a good dream.
Amen. Well, are you familiar with how we end our shows?
No.
Would you like to tell him how we end our shows?
So we end our show with a rap cap.
What is a rap cap?
A rap cap is where I freestyle rap about our conversation.
Okay.
So you get serenaded by my freestyling.
All right.
Okay. So Logan.
Yeah.
You want to give me a beat? Okay. Jerry started his career in a wheelchair, and then in middle school, he was growing facial hair. He broke his shoulder. Actually, it was dislocated. And then he was like, I feel constipated. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Next thing you know, he is in a theater show. Then he's glowing up. It was looking kind of rough, but Jerry, he was like a diamond in the rough. Jerry does acting. Jerry does film. Jerry writes stuff. I'm fading out. I'm fading out. Okay, wait. Second verse. Jerry wants to be paid to make theater. Nothing rhymes with theater. What rhymes with theater?
Okay.
Okay. Well.
Theater, a heater.
Wife beater.
And thank you so much for joining us
On the Cue the Spotlight podcast. Jerry, it's been a joy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate anybody who's listening, who is taking the time to listen to what I have to say and my stories. And
shout out to No Solutions Production Network for producing this podcast.
and we'll see you next week.